Hello students, I'm Himani Sharma, your UGC NET Paper 1 and Paper 2 educator for English Literature. In this new YouTube video, we will be doing the analysis of Shift 2 of, English Literature. So we all know that whenever you are giving your UGC NET examination, there are two papers which are there, correct? Paper 1 and Paper 2. So paper 2 is something like right now we are going to discuss about English literature. Correct? So English literature would or should be the one that you have done your masters in, and then you have scored 55% of marks in that very thing. That's how you are eligible to sit for this very examination. I hope this thing is clear. Now we all know that English being such a vast field, this literature has, so many things to deal with. We have multiple literary theories coming to the post-colonial, talking about the queer theory, etc. We have cultural studies as well. And not just this, we have to cover different literatures from different parts of the world, like German literature, French literature, English literature, right? The British one, American, Australian, Indian, etc. So we all need to be thoroughly aware while preparing for such an examination that what are we supposed to, know about the particular units that are there in the syllabus. Coming to the question paper that we had here, I will be bringing this video in two parts, because one video will be so long then if I try to do all those 100 questions which are there. So there will be two parts. Part 1 will be dealing with today with certain questions. So first question that I have here is, what needs my Shakespeare for his honored bones, the labor of an age in piled stones? Or that his hallowed relics should be hid under a star-appointed pyramid. So who is the author of these very lines is what is the question which has been asked, and this is the cycle of December 2022, which was, held in March 2023. The answer to this question is option B. So try to answer these questions on your own as well while, looking at the screens right now, and then also trying to pause videos, giving answer on your own and then playing them again. So it is option B, that is John Milton. He was the one who has written these 4 lines, and he, through this very poem on Shakespeare, it is his first published poem, right? So these are the factors which are important. These are certain kinds of factual information which is really important when dealing with such a subject which is English literature, correct? So Shakespeare has, this very Milton has written on Shakespeare in the year 1630, and it was his first published poem in English, and it celebrates what? What is the poem about? It is basically paying a homage, a remembrance to William Shakespeare and the genius that he really was, correct? So his singular genius, and Milton, trying to praise him here, says that no one on earth could be the one who can be compared. Your genius cannot be compared to anyone, be it a monument, be it a statue of very importance. That thing is not anything if we compare that to your genius. So that is the basic, theme or the summary of this very poem. His works live on within the hearts and minds of his audiences. Why does he say that? He says that because of the fact that we in today's time as well are well aware of the fact that how much appeal, universal appeal, William Shakespeare has. There are multiple plays which are written by him, correct? Those multiple plays are the ones which are relevant in today's times as well. So his genius, even though he was writing in the 16th century back then, his genius is still living here. The topics that he talked about are still relevant here. These are the last lines that he wrote. And so sepultured in such pomp dost lie, that kings for such a tomb would wish to die. That he wants to say that for such a tomb of a person who has been so much, having so much genius, that kind of person to be or to lie in such a tomb would be the wish for which the kings would want to die, correct? So this is how is paying homage to Shakespeare. The next question is, who among the following praised Chaucer's translation of Roman de la Rose? Answer to this question is option A, that is Eustache Deschamps. So first of all, we all know while doing English literature, Chaucer is the one which pops up in our head, who is known as the father of English literature, right? So his lifetime has been divided into three groups basically. These are French, Italian and English, with somewhat or on a shorter span of his lifetime for Latin, correct? So these were the main and the prominent fields or the languages in which Chaucer was writing. So the French author Eustache Deschamps was the one who called Chaucer the great translator, noble Chaucer. Why he says that? He says that because of the fact that how Chaucer, through his translation, has tried to bring forth for the audience something which was written in French. So a very favorite romance of someone of the French literature that has been brought to the English audiences through the translation of Chaucer's work, correct? So in French it was Les Romans de la Rose, which was a medieval poem, and this poem was written by two people, Guillaume de Loris and Jean de Meaux. So these were the two people who have written this very poem, and Chaucer was the one who translated it later on to make it accessible to the readers who were English. Next question for the Unfallen is a book of poems written by whom? The answer to this very question is option C. Geoffrey Hill is the one who is attributed with the with the writing of the book named For the Unfallen, and it is a collection of how many poems? It is a collection of 29 poems, and in 1915 it was published, which means that it is somewhere or the other related to the modernist stance, correct? So he was an English poet. And what does this very collection deal with? This collection basically deals and explore that what and how the morality of people was there after World War II happened, after the Holocaust, which was done by Hitler. So it's history of World War, the aftermath of World War II and the Holocaust. Both of them are dealt deeply, talked about deeply, explored deeply by whom? Geoffrey Hill in For the Unfallen, correct? Then we have The Princess, a medley by Tennyson is what? The answer to this question is, it is option C. It is a narrative poem. Now let's just see, first of all, what is a narrative poem? As the name suggests, a narrative poem is the one which is narrating or telling a story. All right. So The Princess, which was written by Tennyson, it is a serio-comic blank verse narrative poem that it is trying to tell a story, and it is published in the year 1847. Sometimes now they ask the questions which are related to the years as well. So some from the prominent writers, some of the books which should be arranged chronologically on your notebooks should be done, or wherever from wherever sources you are reading from. So one tip that I would like to give you all here is that now if you are watching the video, some of you might have made your own notes, some of you be reading something or the other from other sources, from other books. So my advice here would be, note these things down on a piece of paper and try to attach that piece of paper near wherever these topics, these people have been named in the book or your notes, etc. So that whenever you are revisiting them while studying them thoroughly, you are also revising what was seriously asked in this very particular question of question paper of the year 2023. Correct? So what is the story about? The Princess, the name suggests it is a story of a princess who founds a women's university, and founds here means that she is the one who establishes the women's university where she forbids the men to enter. Correct? Contains interludes. Now this is an important factor to note down here, that they can ask that what are the famous interludes which are included in this very collection, in the collection named, in the poem named The Princess of Medley Poem. So these are certain interludes which were written by Tennyson, which are considered to be his best works or best pieces. These are the ones which are included in this very thing only, The Princess. Next is, which of the following works is not written by P.B. Shelley? The answer to this question is option C, that is The Vision of Judgment. Coming to the explanation, there is this very funny thing that Robert Southey was someone who called Byron belonging from, a satanic school. Why and what is a satanic school? He called Byron and his works belonging to something which is related to, of course, as the name suggests, Satan, and the way Satan was having so much of pride in being wrong. So Southey was the one who mocked whom? He mocked Byron, Lord Byron, in this very work, A Vision of Judgment. So this is one thing that you all need to note down really carefully, that it is Southey who wrote A Vision of Judgment, and then the next year, Byron replied with the text of the same name, but he changed one word, The Vision of Judgment. Right? So now Byron tried to mock whom? Southey, and he gave him a satirical reply there. Also, Byron has also mentioned Robert Southey in other works of his, which are English Bard and Scotch Reviewers, etc. There he also has mocked, Southey, because of the fact that Southey was trying to, nitpick these very things, that yes, you belong to this very school, etc. So you see how these very things are also really important when we are dealing with English literature, that what is the work which has been written by someone, jiske upar they have given, some kind of reply to something, correct? So A Vision by Southey, The Vision of Judgment by Lord Byron. Next is, in whose poem the reader meets Aunt Jennifer's tigers? The answer to this question is option D. Adrien Rich is the one in whose poem we meet, Aunt Jennifer. Now, first of all, this poem was written in what year? 1951. And she is an American poet. If some of you would have passed from the CBSE board, you would have, come across this very poem as well, where we are taught by the teacher that how Aunt Jennifer is trying to, craft vibrant tapestry panels. And what are they depicting? They are depicting the tigers. Now, tigers here are serving as some kind of metaphor, that she is drawing something, because she, at that point of time when this poem was written, divorce was not which was acceptable. Divorce was not common at all. So a woman who is in a happy marriage, that is Aunt Jennifer, she was suffering living in a unhappy marriage, and that is why, just to escape from those very unhappy moments of her marital life, she tries to, draw tigers. And tigers may be accounted for the symbol of strength. They might be accounted for something that to run, right? She wanted to maybe escape from her husband, but she couldn't, because of the fact that at that society it was not important, right? It was not acceptable, basically. So this is the factual information related to that very question. Next is, name the playwright who has written Lawrence Sahib. The answer to this question is option C. Gurcharan Das is the one who has written this very play named Lawrence Sahib, right? And it was his first play. Now you see how prominent would that writer have been, whose first play has been awarded with Sultan Padamsee Prize in 1968. What is Sultan Padamsee Prize? Sultan Padamsee Prize or award is something which is given to the playwrights in India. Correct? So he wrote his first play, for which he got the Sultan Padamsee Award, right? And what does the play focus on? It basically focuses on when, Maharaja Ranjit Singh passed away, what was the confusion in the Punjab's history, how the British were trying to treat the Sikhs, right? this is what this entire play deals with, the conflict, the chaos between different classes, the Britishers who were there from the East India Company. Correct? Next is, who among the following has composed the lyrical drama Hellas? The answer to this question is option B, that is P.B. Shelley. You can also, as I'm telling you, note or segregate these very writers down based on the age to which they belong. Like P.B. Shelley belongs to the Romantic age, etc. Right? So he wrote Hellas, written by Shelley, published in 1822, and it was his last published poem during his lifetime. So basically it was the lyrical drama, that is why it is considered as a poem as well, because lyrics are used there, and he wrote it while he was in Pisa. And what was he dealing with? He was trying to raise money for the independence of Greece, basically, right? The Greek War of Independence from whom? Sultan Mahmud, who was a Turkish ruler. Correct? Next is, name the playwright who composed the play A Woman Killed with Kindness. A really important question and asked time and again in the UGC NET examination. Answer is option D. It is Thomas Hayward who has been attributed with the writing of what play? A Woman Killed with Kindness. One of the earliest middle class tragedies, which means it has a sad ending. And it explores what kinds of themes? Themes of marriage, sexuality, social position. And what does the play in one line deals with? It deals with a woman cheating on her husband with his husband, like, you know, her husband's best friend, his best friend she is cheating with, right? So it deals with these prominent themes which are there. And this is the entire talk that we have. What does it really deal with? Next question, name the celebrated actor who played the leading role in the first production of John Osborne's The Entertainer. So we all should also keep this very thing in mind, that there are certain movies which are based on certain written works. Correct? So these very things, like for example, even Heather, Makbul, these things, these very movies are based on certain sources which have been there. So there are some prominent writers. They also have asked in the previous times a question related to a celebrated Shakespearean actor. Correct? So we all should be knowing these very things as well. So the person, the entertaining, in The Entertainer, sorry, the celebrated actor was option B, Laurence Olivier. Which of the following statement holds true with regard to sentimental comedy? So try to pause your screens here and answer, read these four options carefully and then try to answer what you think is the right definition of a sentimental comedy. The answer to this question is option D, that it is a species of dramatic composition because it is written in the form of a drama, in the form of a play, in which the virtues of private life are exhibited rather than the vices exposed, sorry, and the distresses rather than the faults of mankind make our interest in the piece. First of all, this very, chunk has been taken by Oliver Goldsmith's essay, which is known as an essay on the theatre or a comparison between laughing and sentimental comedy. So it was written by Oliver Goldsmith, where he was describing this very particular genre of what? Of sentimental comedy. And this essay was published in Westminster Magazine, a really very prominent magazine. And it was written by whom? Oliver Goldsmith. He describes sentimental comedy or sentimental plays as a type of play which came, of course, these were the plays which were prominent during what point of time? During the Restoration era. And these were the plays followed a format of a moral character who falls into some kind of a trap and he is misled. He or she is misled, and then again with some kind of, virtue, he or she comes to the path of righteousness again. Correct? So basically dealing with a character who has been misled and then coming back to the right path again. By an appeal to his noble sentiments, a man could be reformed. So he as a person who's trying to identify or talk about sentimental comedy, is trying to say that every person could be reformed and set back to the path of virtue. It is their willingness, right, that should be working there. And the best known sentimental comedy of the Restoration times is Sir Richard Steele's The Conscious Lovers. Next is, I recognize that its heroine is a little prig and its hero a pompous ass, but I do not care. Who said this very, this very statement was said by Somerset Maugham, but about which work of Jane Austen? The answer to this question is option D, that is Mansfield Park. This very, novel was the one which Maugham loved. So let's just see what did he say. First of all, factual things. He gave this very statement in the work Books in You, and he described Mansfield Park as his favorite book by Jane Austen. I recognize that its heroine is a little prig and its hero a pompous ass, but I do not care. It is wise, witty, and tender, a masterpiece of ironical humor and subtle observation. So what he is talking about it here, he is talking about the play, the novel Mansfield Park. That he loved the novel, right, because it is a witty, tender, and a masterpiece of ironical humor. Next is, in which year R.L. Stevenson's The Treasure Island was published? Answer to this question is option C, in the year 1883. So let us just read the explanation that this book that you see here, The Treasure Island, it has some other name as well, which is The Sea Cook, correct? And it was firstly published in chunks in the magazine Young Folks from 1881 to 1882. October 1881 to January 1882, and then finally it was published in the book form in the year 1883. That's why we talk about the publication date here. It's 1883. Next is, which of the following is not written by Amitav Ghosh? A question related to Indian literature. The answer to this question is option D, that is English August is not written by Amitav Ghosh. Then who wrote it? It is 𝐈𝐀𝐒 𝐏𝐫𝐞𝐥𝐢𝐬 who has written, and this is anything which has this colon etc. It means that this is the subtitle of that particular work. Written by 𝐈𝐀𝐒 𝐏𝐫𝐞𝐥𝐢𝐬 in the year 1988. It was published. And what does it deal with? It deals with the struggle of a person, of a civil servant who has been, posted in a rural area. And at that point of time, when it was written in the 1980s, about the 1980s situation, like people used to think that if they are a civil servant, of course, why are they being posted in a rural area and what are the struggles which are coming, where they are usually dealing with, correct? There was a sequel to this very work which is known as The Memories of the Welfare State. Correct? Next is, which among the following is not an American slave narrative? The answer to this question is option D. Songs of Enchantment is not an American slave narrative. It is a novel by the Nigerian author Ben Okri. And what is this novel about? This novel is about a prominent theme of change, transition. Okri in this novel is trying to tell that how change, of course, even if it is necessary, if we try to change one thing, it leads to change in some other form as well, in another way as well. So with one change, multiple changes come. So this was a part of a trilogy which was published by Ben Okri. So it is the second book of the trilogy. First book was The Famished Road, second was Songs of Enchantment, and third was Infinite Riches. Correct? Next is, who among the following theorists have written on effective economics or effective economies? Answer to this question is option C, that is Sara Ahmed is the one who wrote about effective economies. Now, what does she say first of all? Let's just read it from here. That she says that feeling and emotions are not properties of subjects or objects, that they should not be related, right? But through work, through their circulation between simple objects and subjects, these thing gets circulated basically. How is now she trying to tell? Let me just give you an example here. For instance, you have a soft toy, a teddy bear at your place. So it was just marketed as a product. It was just an object which was there, but you have developed certain feelings for your soft toy. So she is trying to say that how feelings and emotions become stuck to a particular subject, object or spaces. I can be feeling, nostalgic. I can be feeling linked to a particular place or a particular space as well. Correct? Then we have the next question. Who among the following is not a Yale critic? The one who did not belong to the Yale school. The answer to this question is option D. Roland Barthes is the one who is not a Yale critic. Why do we say that? Because there were other prominent writers who were there, and Yale University, the Yale school, was associated with the deconstructionist theories. And we know that Roland Barthes was not a deconstructionist. Correct? So that is why he is not associated with this very school. You see the prominence of different schools that you are supposed to memorize as well, or recall, so you can know that this person gave this very theory. So Roland Barthes was not associated with this theory of deconstructivism, and the prominent members are Paul de Man, J. Hillis Miller, Geoffrey Hartman, and Harold Bloom. These people are the ones who have been talking about the theory of deconstruction, and deconstruction theorists these are. Hence, because of the fact that Roland Barthes is not a deconstructionist, this is why he does not belong to this very school, the Yale school. Next is demythologizing, right, is a term associated with the works of whom? Answer is option C. It is Rudolf Bultmann who is associated with this very term of demythologizing. Now, what do first of all we mean, and where does he give us this very term? Termed in this term was given in the book The New Testament and Mythology, the problem of demythologizing the New Testament preaching. So Rudolf Bultmann was someone who was trying to draw a connection between hermeneutics and mythology or mythology, and he was trying to do what? First of all, hermeneutics is a study of interpretation basically, and in the previous times this interpretation was just related to the Bible. After that, because of the fact that there is this one school which was developed, hermeneutics, this after the development of this very school, this gained prominence and the interpretation spread far across than just living to the Bible or getting stuck with the Bible wala part. But now he is trying to draw the relationship between how the interpretation is related with the mythology, and he is trying to give the examples of certain scriptures, that how in certain scriptures myths do exist. Next is, who among the following is known as a post-Marxist thinker? The answer to this very question is option A, that is Ernest Leclau is the one, Leclau. He is the one who is associated with being a post-Marxist. First of all, what was Marxism? Marxism, if we talk about the mainstream Marxism, it is something which was just related to the class struggles, that how the classes are divided, the bourgeois, the proletariats, etc. These people are the ones who are in constant conflict with one another. Correct? This was the normal Marxism, the mainstream Marxism that we talk about. But after that, a new type of Marxism came, and for that very thing, Ernest Leclau also wrote a book which was titled as Post-Marxism, Populism and Critique. So he reveals, he now in his book, in the theory of post-Marxism, basically, he tries to reveal and deal with the sexual, racial, class and ethnic division. So just from the class struggle, the mainstream Marxism, he has moved to something which is, relevant in today's time, about which things should be taught, that is about sexual divisions, about racial divisions, etc. Correct? Then is Jonathan Bates, The Song of the Earth was published in which year? The answer to this question is option C. That is, in the year 2000, this book was published. What does this book particularly deal with? It deals with the definition of nature, culture and environment, that how these three words are different yet somewhere related to one another, and how their meanings have changed if we talk about the literature of the 18th century. Correct? So it is also about people's growing alienation from nature, that how in today's time people are being the ones who are getting alienated from the nature. They are being more concerned with the technological part, the technological aspects, where we deal with smartphones, we are the ones who are scrolling on Instagram, etc. Right? So we have lost the touch with nature. This is what this particular book deals with, and through this book he is trying to say that how even at the time of ecological crisis, when some kind of ecological crisis will be there, environmental crisis will be there, literature should be the ones where we feel, reading a literature, piece of literature, we feel at ease with. Correct? So the necessity of literature in a time of some kind of ecological crisis. Then we have, who among the following is not a member of the Frankfurt School? And the Frankfurt School is related to the the topic of cultural studies. The answer to this question is option A, that is Louis Althusser is not the one belonging to the Frankfurt School. So first of all, it is a group of researchers who are associated with the ISR. What is the ISR? Institute for Social Research in Frankfurt. And why was this school named as Frankfurt School? Because of the fact that the theorists, this group was the one which was formed in Frankfurt, Germany. Correct? That is how it gains its name. ISR, that is Institute for Social Research. It is the first Marxist-oriented research center. This is really important. This is really factual from the UGC NET point of view. Prominent members were Max Horkheimer, Theodor Adorno, Herbert Marcuse, Walter Benjamin, correct? Friedrich Pollock, Leo Lowenthal and Erich Fromm. These were the prominent, and you can note these writers down on a piece of paper while looking and watching this very video, my dear students. Which of the following methods is the oldest for teaching English language? Something related to the field of ELT. Now you see how English in India, there will be certain commissions which will be there in these questions. English in India and how evolution of English has developed. What are the various strategies? So this one deals with ELT. The oldest for teaching English language method is option B, that is the grammar translation method, or the GTM method, the short form. So what do we do in the grammar translation method? Convert the sentences of the native language. For example, if I belong from Punjab, so from Punjabi, I'll be converting the sentences into the target language. So my target language could be anything, could be English, let's just say, because we are talking about the oldest English teaching method, correct? So in grammar translation classes, this grammar rules of the foreign language, that is English, will be learned by me, and then I'll try to apply those rules in my native language and then convert it again to what? The target language of English, the foreign language. So you see how basic this one is. So drilling is time and again done here in this very method. Next is, in the area of theory and research known as second language acquisition, SLA, the classroom is considered what? The answer to this question is option D, that a classroom is considered an experimental laboratory. Why do we say that? First of all, second language acquisition, if you talk about ELT or English in use, the unit which is there, you are supposed to do this very thing very prominently and very importantly, right? Because time and again questions have been asked. So coming back again to SLA, that is second language acquisition, it is a process of acquiring a second language after a person has already established a first language. So what is the difference between acquiring and learning? Let's just look at this very example. That a person, an English speaking person, tries to learn Spanish. So he is taking Spanish classes. This is learning, right? Because he is not totally surrounded by people or in that very environment where this thing is common. So when that same person moves to Mexico. Now he is surrounded by people who speak in Spanish. So because of the fact that now he is surrounded by people whose language is Spanish, then he'll be able to acquire that language more easily. Correct? So that is how it is different from learning and acquiring. Correct? Students who are acquiring English as a second language can make progress if they have enough opportunity to interact with others, and these others should be the ones who belong to that very language which the student is trying to acquire. Correct? So if I'll be in touch with someone who keeps on speaking in English, then it will be easier for me to be, the one who learns English or who acquires English as a language at a faster pace. Next is, the arrival of corpus linguistics has revitalized what? The answer to this question is option A. It has revitalized the writing or observation-based grammar. First of all, what is corpus linguistics? It is the study of language, of course, if you are talking about ELT, based on large collections of real life language stored in corpora. Now, what is corpora? Computerized databases created for linguistics research. So any person who is doing his or her PhD in linguistics, he will be dealing with a lot of corpora, the material, the real life language which is available in the digital form, right, on the digital database, and from that data, that person is going to acquire data and do the study of language. Next is, which one of the following is the don'ts of writing a dissertation or thesis? The don't, which one of the following you should not be doing? The answer to this question is option D. A researcher should not bother about the use of proper scholarly conventions from the very beginning. We, when do research, we are the ones who are associated with different referencing styles as well. MLA, APA, Chicago. Then how can a researcher be the one who will not be bothering about these very things? The researcher should of course keep these things in mind, right? So of course this point is wrong, because the researcher should be should be sticking to the points which are there already established, that this is how you're supposed to write your research paper and move forward with it. Next is, in which year did the Indian Education Commission, which was the 6th commission in the history of Indian education, under the chairmanship of Dr. D.S. Kothari, submitted its report? So the answer to this question is option B, that is in 1966, Kothari Commission came. So you see now this question, the question related to commissions will be the evolution, the unit of evolution of English in India. All right, next question that we have here is, who was the chairman of the University Education Commission of 1948? So this very unit will prepare you for paper 1's Higher Education Commission as well. So you can hit the same bird with two stones if you pay that much attention to these very commissions. The answer to this question is option D. Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan was the one who was associated with the University Education Commission of the year 1948, after 1 year. Next is, which of the following is the first newspaper of India? First newspaper of India is option A, that is Hickey's Bengal Gazette, and it was named something else as well. What was the other name of the same very newspaper? It was Calcutta General Advertiser. Correct? And who was the one who founded this very newspaper? It was an Irishman named James Augustus Hickey in the year 1779. And because of the fact that it was started in Calcutta, it was known as Calcutta General Advisor or the Hickey's Bengal Gazette. Correct? The great subject of the British government ought to be the promotion of European literature and science among the natives of India. All funds appropriated for the purpose of education would be best employed on English education alone. Who made the comment given above? The answer to this question is option C. That is, Lord William Bentinck is the one who was of this view that, education, the English education, science, and the spread of English education alone in India should be the sole focus of the East India Company. Next is 𝐏𝐤 𝐏𝐫𝐞𝐥𝐢 or Braj Kachru, who is known for his 3 circles of English, observes that English-speaking countries are separated into 3 prominent groups. What are those very groups? The answer to this very question is option C, that is inner circle, outer circle, and expanding circle. These are the 3 areas. These are the 3 circles in which the countries which are speaking in English, those are divided. Now let's just see what is the inner circle and why did he talk about these very things. He argues that there are many varieties of English, all of which were linguistically equal. We all know that the grammar rules, etc., all of them are equal, but the way one country speaks in English is different from the one who does not or who does speak English but on a smaller scale. Let's just give the example of India only. That a person belonging to UK will be more fluent in the same language as a person who is a non-native, who is an Indian, who belongs to some other country as well, right? So he tries to talk about world Englishes, correct? In his 1985 paper, he classified English using the now famous 3 circles model. These were the concentric circles and he called them the inner, outer, and expanding circles. Inner circle countries, the ones where English was the first language, traditionally the first language. So English as the first language. Those countries are what? Great Britain, US, Australia. There, the people, the natives speak in English from the very beginning of their childhood. Outer circles, where English has been the one which was used for an official or institutionalization purpose, or basically or typically these were the countries which were colonized by the British or other parts of the world. So post-colonial nations like Nigeria, Kenya, India, because it was also colonized, right, by the East India Company. Singapore and the Philippines, these are the ones where English at some point of time was serving the role of the official language. Then is the expanding circle, where English was generally used only as a foreign language, correct, which played no institutional. So here let us just write, rather than English as a foreign language, because you might get confused, this as ENL, English as a native language. Here English as what? English as the official language. And in the expanding circle, English as the foreign language, EFL, English as a foreign language, which played no institutional role or official role. So countries such as China, where English is not that much required, Japan, these were the ones where no colonization took place and no, institutional purpose was used. The English was not used for any institutional purpose. So he talked about, the US linguist talked about these very circles. Just a summary. Inner circle, native language. Outer or extended circle, where English has served as the official language, and expanding circle, where it has formed the role of what? The official language. So you can see this very thing here on the board as well. Next question, which on the following is false about V.S. Naipaul? Very prominent writer. The answer to this question is option B, that he won the Booker, for A House of Mr. Biswas. He did not win the Booker for A House of Mr. Biswas, but rather he won the Booker for the novel In a Free State, which was published in the year 1971. Correct? Next is, which one of the following is false? So you can pause your screens and read these very statements down and then try to answer them. The answer to this very question is option B, that is, an ideal literary researcher should not cast himself back to another age. So this is wrong. Why? Because here, of course, first of all, the word cast is being or referring to. So of course, if a literary research is being conducted, a researcher can refer back to another age, right, rather than his own, because of the fact that he wants to draw maybe some kind of comparisons, etc. So this statement is wrong. That is why this is false and this is the right answer. Which of the following is true in the context of new criticism? Answer is option C, that the distinctive procedure for a new critic is explication. So they have asked from these very statements the statement which is true with regards to new criticism. What do we mean by explication? Explication here means that when you are describing something in greater detail, and the new critics are the ones who describe whatever work they are reading to describe that in the best way or in the best detailed manner possible. So this one is true. Next is the pamphlet The Power of Love, which was published in the year 1643, proclaiming the importance of brotherhood as a means of achieving a radical change in social relationship, was written by whom? So brotherhood as the one which can bring change, the social relationships, deals with this very thing, and it was written by whom? The answer to this question is option B, that is William Baldwin was the one who wrote this very pamphlet. Correct? Francis Bacon, The Advancement of Learning, this was an essay, attempted to draw a distinction between two kinds of truth. What are those two kinds of truth? He talks about the truth which is theological, that is option A is the correct one. Theological truth, which is the one which is spread by the theologists, the people who are, related to, let me just write, authority of God. Scientific truth, somewhere or the other related with the reason, logic, observation, etc. Next is, I shall be ambitious to have it said of me that I have brought philosophy out of closets in libraries, schools and colleges, to dwell in clubs and coffee houses, assemblies at tea tables at coffee houses. Who made this very comment? Very important statement. The answer is option B. That is, Joseph Addison said this very thing, and he also added, when he was writing the uses of the spectator, there he passed this very statement, that it was said of Socrates that he brought philosophy down from heaven to inhabit among men. And I shall be ambitious to have it said of me that I brought philosophy out of closets to the tea tables, to the coffee houses. And these were very, these coffee houses, these tea tables were very prominent in the age of Pope and Johnson, when pamphlet writing was really important. Next is, Dr. Johnson's Dictionary of English Language was published in what year? Multiple times the same question has been asked. The answer to this question is option C. In the year 1755, this very Dictionary of English Language was published by Dr. Johnson, and it was published in London. 2-volume work it was, because of the fact that it surpassed earlier dictionaries. There were many dictionaries who were earlier there, but those were not the ones who were giving, the right definition of a particular word. It was not that those dictionaries which were before this one, these were not the ones that we see today. So basically, he provided history of language, from where this particular word has, emerged, grammar, extensive list of words representing basic general vocabulary. So there is this example here. Here he has tried to describe the word oats or oatmeal. So firstly, he has given a normal definition of what are oats, and then he also was the one who was trying to cite the same word, by talking about the Miller's Tale, Shakespeare, John Locke, right, Swift, etc. So he was referring to the works of the writers where this prominent word have been used. So words were also leading back to the quotations which were written by the writers, or which appeared in some work. Next is an essay on the principles of human action, was written by whom? It was written by option D, that is William Hazlitt. So what does this essay deal with? the essay related to the human action. It deals with the natural disinterestedness of the human mind, that how human mind is at some point of time disinterested also in certain things. Next is, which of the following is false about Frederick Douglass? The answer to this question is option D, that he wrote Up from Slavery. No, he was not the one who is associated with this very work, but the work that he wrote for the slave narrative was the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave. So he himself was a slave, right? And when he escaped from the slavery, after that he wrote this very, work which was published in the year 1845, and at that point of time, in only 4 months, it sold 4,500 copies. Coming back to the Up from Slavery is an autobiography of Booker T. Washington that was first published in the year 1901, and hence it is not written by Frederick Douglass. Next is, the phrase structures of feelings is attributed to whom? Very important cultural studies or literary theory question. The answer to this question is option C. Raymond Williams is the one who is associated with the structures of feeling. Now, what does he mean by the structures of feeling? Irreducible quality of lived social experience. Why does he say that? First of all, he has given this very term, right? He has given this very term, and this very term was expanded later on in his work, Marxism and Literature. Marxism. In this work, this term was expanded and not particularly given. It was given in some other book, and that is your question, to find out that where was this very, particular word or phrase, originated from. Where did he give that one? Coming to what was the basic definition of structure of feeling, the different ways of thinking trying to compete to emerge at one point of time in history. He talks about that how feelings are also structured according to the various cultures which are there. And what type of cultures he has talked about? He has talked about the 3 types of feelings or 3 types of cultures which are there in a in a society. The dominant one, the emergent, and the residual one. For the residual, first of all, let me just give you an example of monarchy. Even in today's time in England, monarchy, the kings are there, but they do not rule. They are not the ones who are giving instructions. So even after the kingship has ended, these things are still there. This monarchy is still, as the residue which is left from that very thing, but the government which is ruling there is different from the monarchy, and that is not how it operates. The emergent is the opposite of the dominant culture. Dominant culture would be some things or someone who will be the one who will be handling the position of power. And emergent will be the one who will be opposing this dominant culture time and again to come in the position of power as well. Correct? Next is, a valediction forbidding mourning is written by whom? The answer to this question is option A, that is, it is written by John Donne and Adrienne Rich. So it was, first of all, the title of John Donne's poem 1633, in which it was published, the metaphysical poem which talks about the everlasting of love between the 2 souls, between 2 lovers, who love each other so much, right? So he was the one who wrote this very poem. But after certain time in the year 1917, right, this poem with the same title was published by whom? Was published by Adrienne Rich, but this was not talking about the love of lovers, but it was talking about feminism. Correct? That how a poet's mind deals with certain things, and how she as a poet fails to write in a language which was dominated by men entirely. Right? Her struggle, the struggle of her voice, that how it suffers from fitting in the conventional poetic world which is ruled by the males or the patriarchy. Next is, which of the following poems are written by Alexander Pope? The answer to this question is option C, that is, A and B only, that is the Dunciad and the Moral Essays. These were the two poems which were written by whom? Alexander Pope. He is also a really prominent writer. That's why these two works, will be discussing the facts of these two works in detail a little bit more. So, first of all, the Dunciad, poem written by Pope, and it satirizes his enemies in the literary world. Who was his enemy at that point of time? It was Louis Theobald, and he, in his work Shakespeare Restored, which was published in 1726, he mocked Pope. So Pope, now again, you see the attacks which were going between the literary figures of different eras. Same is the case with here, the Pope and Louis Theobald. So he attacked Pope in this very work written in 1726, and Pope replied with the Dunciad, which was published in the year, it was comprising of 4 books, first published in 1728 after he attacked, Theobald attacked, and then the last one published in the year 1743, and then it was compiled together. Moral essays, as the name suggests, are the ethical poems which deal with morals, right, published in the year 1731 to 35. Inspired by whom? Important fact to note down here, Lord Bolingbroke, right? Whenever you will read Pope, you will see the mention of this very name time and again. And from that, he took the form of 4 epistles. So this poem, Moral Essays, is divided into 4 epistles, right, which are there. So this question has been asked like a match of following as well, in some question as well in the PYQs. So you need to know the epistles and who are they addressed to, right? So epistle 1, addressed to Viscount Cobham, and it deals with the knowledge and characters of men. Correct? So wherever you are making notes, you can jot this point down. Epistle 2 deals with the characters of women, and it is addressed to Martha Blount. Epistle 3 is addressed to Lord Bathurst, and it deals with how to use the riches, how to use the material wealth, right? And epistle 4 is the extension of the theme of epistle 3 only, that it talks about, it also talks about epistle 4, first of all addressed to Lord Burlington, and it deals with the use of riches, plus how instances are provided with the tasteless use of wealth, that how you should not be spending your money just like that. Correct? Next is related to Indian literature. Identify the plays written by Vijay Tendulkar from the following. So this play is different, this is different, right? The Vultures is different, Encounter in Ombugland is different, Sakharam Binder, Fire and the Rain, Scandal in Fairyland, these are different. The answer to this question is option C, which is A, C and D only. These are the 3 options which, these are the 3 options which have the plays of Vijay Tendulkar. So the Cyclist and His First Woman were the one which were published in what year? In the year 2005 by Tendulkar, right? And it deals with the Indian society and critiquing it. What are the ills which are there? First of all, his Fifth Woman deals with the injustice and inequalities which are there when a woman, deals with the domestic sphere of the husband-wife relationship. Cyclist, on the other hand, which he thought to be his last play, the Cyclist deals with a cyclist's journey in the world, right? Uninterrupted single piece about the adventure of life told through a cyclist's journey. The Vulture, 𝐏𝐫𝐤, it was written in 1971 based on his perception of how the people, like he saw certain greedy people around him, and that is how that thing gave him the inspiration to write this very particular work, The Vultures. So these are the translations by Tendulkar. Some other person has translated these very works from Marathi, but these are the English translations that we are talking about here in the context of Indian literature. Next is Encounter in Ombugland, which was published in the year 1974, talks about how people are fooled in power games and how the most cunning person wins the game of power, and how the role of media is also there, that how media also plays a role to fool people around. Next is the play Sakharam Binder. 1972. It explores the complexities of human nature, that how humans deal with certain complexities in their entire life, in the real life. Next is identifies the plays written by Asif Karimboy from the following. The answer to this question is option B, that is B, C and D only. These three are the plays which are written by Asif Karimboy. Now, what do these three plays deal with? The Captives, which was published in the year 1963, deals with the social relationship between Indian Muslims and Pakistani Muslims. So, you see how these two divisions which have been made on the basis of geography, how he has tried to knit such a pattern, such a theme, correct? Second is An Experiment with Truth, drama based on the life of assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. He wrote My Experiments with Truth. So, to pay him or talk about him, he wrote somewhere the similar type, the play with a similar title, but An Experiment with Truth, right? Next is 𝐈𝐀𝐒, published in 1992. Next question is, which of the following written by Robert Greene? The answer to this question is option C, that is B and E only. B and E only. First of all, let me just tell you how clever are these NTA people, the NTA examiners, UGC NET examiners, that they have broken down the same title into two pieces. So it is a title, Alfonso's King of Aragon, which they have brought down into pieces. Absorbing play by Greene, written around 1590. So it provides the comical way into the negative sense of having pleasant ending. So that is why we talk about the absorbing play. It has comical elements, it has negative elements, it has a pleasant ending, and the history is dramatized in the chronicle form. Correct? Next is, which two plays are written by W.B. Yeats, William Butler Yeats? The answer to this question is option B, that is A and D only. The Land of the Heart's Desire and the Countess Kathleen, these are the two plays which are written by W.B. Yeats. Now let us just look to the explanation here. Irish poet and 1923 Nobel laureate William Butler Yeats, which was first performed in the year 1894. It was published later on, right? So this was the year when Yeats was given the Nobel Prize in Literature in the year 1923. Then we have the Countess Kathleen, a verse drama by W.B. Yeats, published in 1892 and performed in 1899, right? So it is, first of all, as we all know, that Yeats was the one who talked about the Irish revival. So he was, of course, the one who was dealing with the Irish folklore, and he was also the one who was associated with the creation of the Irish theatre, correct? And this very verse, this very, drama, the Countess Kathleen, was dedicated to his love, who kind of time and again rejected him, Maud Gonne, right? So these were certain questions in the video of part 1 of English literature related to shift 2. I'll be bringing more questions as well in part 2. Till then, you guys can note these things down on a piece of paper, as I already am telling you. I will see you again in some other YouTube video. Thank you so much and have a good day.